morning. Thank you for joining us today. We have a packed house. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge some of the special guests who are with us today. First, our Commissioner of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, Commissioner Rose Harvey. Deputy Commissioner of the New York State DEC, Kathy Moser. James Gilmore, the Director of the Division of Marine Resources, New York State DEC. Executive Director of the Nature Conservancy, Bill Ohlfelder. Captain Tony DeLernia, Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council. Proud to be joined by my colleague, Nassau County Executive Laura Curran. My colleague in the Suffolk County Legislature represents this district, Rob Trotta. Town of Smithtown Deputy Supervisor Tom McCarthy. We have with us Southampton Supervisor Jay Schneiderman. Thanks for coming out, Jay. This is not your local beach. Our Hempstead Town Supervisor, Laura Gillen. Thank you, Laura. Oyster Bay Town Supervisor Joe Saladino. Town of Brookhaven Deputy Supervisor Dan Panico. Thanks, Dan. And we also have with us former Supervisor of North Hempstead and now Deputy County Executive John Kamen. And finally, proud to welcome the former Supervisor of the town of Smithtown, but really incredibly distinguished career in public service, probably the longest serving supervisor in the history of our state, Supervisor Pat Vecchio is with us. This morning we are going to hear, of course, from our governor, Andrew Cuomo, but following that we're going to be hearing from the New York Executive Director of the Nature Conservancy that I introduced, Bill Ohlfelder. He'll be coming up after the governor. And then we'll hear from Captain Tony DeLernia, again from the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council, and then our County Executive, Laura Curran, will close out the program. So today I have the pleasure of introducing once again our great governor, Andrew Cuomo, and we are very proud to have him back once again in Suffolk County. I can tell you since the day I took office in 2012, the governor has been with us for every issue, every incident, every challenge that we have faced. He has led and has been an incredible partner. It doesn't matter what the issue is, economic development, public safety, water quality, infrastructure, whatever storm Mother Nature hits us with the next week. He's there helping us, leading and providing the resources, critically providing the resources that we need at the local level to get the job done. And I can tell you the governor comes to Suffolk County a lot. It's not because he likes hanging out with the county executive, but he comes here a lot. And we love him coming here, and we know he comes because he comes to Long Island so often because he understands how special it is, what an extraordinary place this is. And what makes it so special is the incredible natural resources that we have here. Our bays, our rivers, our oceans, our shoreline, and the governor has, since day one, done everything he can to protect those precious natural resources. And on Long Island, we are grateful, Governor, for all the work you've done to protect those resources. And that includes making huge investments into our precious parks here. We have a regional parks director here, Wayne Horsley, our former presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature. $14.3 million in investment just in Sunken Meadow State Park alone, right here at this beautiful facility. $750,000 for this beautiful pavilion to restore it. Those are the kind of investments that the governor has been making routinely here in Suffolk County and all across Long Island. And so, Governor, we're so grateful you're here once again. Thank you for your incredible leadership. Thank you for supporting all of the work and providing the leadership here on Long Island. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our great governor, the 56th governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, this is a great day. It's a special day. It's my pleasure to be back. First to County Executive Steve Bellone, who's a good friend and a great partner for many years. And he always tells you the truth. If you listen to what he says, he tells you the truth. You notice in the introduction he said 4 times. And as Governor Cuomo, providing resources. And that's what we love about him, providing resources. The relationship is not about love. It is about money. It's about providing resources. I'm sure he likes me genuinely as a person, but it's about the money, honey. Big round of applause to Steve Bellone. We have our great new partner, Laura Curran, who's doing a great job. It's a pleasure to have her here. Let's give her a big round of applause. You're going to hear from Bill Oldfelder, who is the New York Executive Director for the Nature Conservancy. The Nature Conservancy does great work all across this state and nation, and he is a tremendous asset, and we're very pleased to have him here with us. Let's give Bill a round of applause. And we have Captain Tony Delernia, who is our representative on what's called the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council, which is very important because that sets quotas for the Northeast, the Eastern Seaboard, fishing regulations, et cetera. New York has historically gotten the short end of the stick. And with Tony representing us, you couldn't have a better advocate than Captain Tony Delernia. Let's give him a round of applause. And Steve mentioned him, but coming to Sunken Meadow brings back a lot of memories, which I'll tell you in a moment. But my father was a very, very tough judge of, especially, he was a tough judge, period. But he was an especially tough judge of other elected officials. And he believed public service was about courage and principle and delivery. And he had such a profound respect for Pat Vecchio. He smiled every time he saw Pat Vecchio. Pat Vecchio is a legend, as you know, but if anyone young in this business who wants a model to emulate, it's former Supervisor Pat Vecchio. Pat, let's stand up, let's give us a round of applause. Let's stand up for Pat Vecchio. Let's give him a round of applause. Sunken Meadow State Park brings back a lot of memories, and County Executive Bellone is exactly right. My father's family grew up in Queens, South Jamaica, Queens. My mother's family grew up in Brooklyn, and most of the siblings moved to Long Island. Why? Because, well, Long Island, that's where you had the beaches and you had the parks. You know, that was God's country, Long Island, compared to Queens and Brooklyn. So they got up and they moved out to Long Island. And we would come visit. And it was God's country. It's magnificent, really public service, distributed parks, golf courses, just it was unimaginable. And that was the attraction. And then you had what Mother Nature gave you, which is the bays and the rivers and the beaches, Montauk Point, Jones Beach. It was just beautiful. And that is the underlying asset that made Long Island, Long Island. It is the beautiful nature and surroundings, and what government has done to provide access to those resources. My father worked very hard. He was never around, but my grandfather, Andrea, who I was named for, Andrew, my father's father, we used to go to Jones Beach and Sunken Meadow. That was the big decision that they would argue about during the week. Where do we go? Do we go to Jones Beach? Do we go to Sunken Meadow? Jones Beach, Sunken Meadow. And he would take me out with my grandmother and a couple of my cousins. And we would come here, and that was the whole day. And that was just a perfect experience and a perfect day. My grandmother would make the sandwiches before we left. They were first-generation immigrants, so everything, they were very careful about money and about food. And I'd be a young kid, and I'd be on the beach, I'd open the sandwich, and inevitably you would get sand in the sandwich, you know. And you'd take that bite, and you'd hear that crunch, and I'd say, no, Grandma, I can't eat this sandwich. She said, you're going to eat that sandwich? I ate that sandwich, sand and all. Sand, I think, actually helps the digestive process. It's Mother Nature's digestive expedient. But then what happened over the years was we sort of took it for granted, and we let many of our parks and natural attributes disintegrate or degrade. Sunken Meadow was just, we didn't do maintenance, we didn't do upkeep. Why? Well, because it's all about doing money and budgets and taxes, and the first line that always goes is maintenance. Well, maintenance, we don't have to do it this year, we'll do it next year. And that happens year after year after year. Our Commissioner of Parks, Rose Harvey, came in and did a presentation to the state agencies when we were doing a budget, and she said, let me show you some pictures of what have happened to our state park system. And our state park system is a national jewel, by the way. And she went through pictures of what was and what is and how it is degraded. And she was right. And we asked for the largest investment in state parks in the state's history, close to $1 billion in park recreation. And Sunken Meadows is an example of that. $14 million, pavilion redone, bathhouse redone, golf courses upgraded. So we can turn this over to the next generation better than we found it. And she has done a fantastic job. Sunken Meadow is just an example of that. Rose Harvey, let's give her a round of applause. You know, we're so lucky to be New Yorkers. New York State has such a great history. When you look at what state was the innovative state, what state was the pioneering state, what state was the adventurous state, it was always the state of New York. Partially because our history was we experienced the problems first, right? We were the stepping off point. So we just encountered the situation before most other states. But it was also our spirit. And our spirit was a very positive, can-do spirit. All the big movements started in New York. Women's rights movement starts in New York and Seneca Falls. Civil rights movement starts in New York. The workers' rights movement and worker safety starts in New York after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. The environmental movement starts in New York on the Hudson River when there was a plan to build a power plant, Storm King Power Plant. And People didn't want to see the Hudson Valley degraded, and that literally started the environmental movement. So we have always been ahead in terms of seeing the problem and getting there first. And we also always had a positive can-do spirit. We're going to do it. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to actually do it. We're going to make things happen. And we did the impossible. Everything we built was the first and the biggest and the best. And everything we built was impossible by all the experts, right? Longest bridges, longest tunnels, longest subway system in Manhattan. You can't do it, and somehow we did it. Somewhere along the way, we lost that mojo for doing, especially on Long Island. We got to a point where NIMBY and pessimism ruled the day rather than optimism and growth. That doesn't work. You know, you either have to grow and improve or you're going backwards. It's almost that simple. And for those of us in public service, I believe when you die and you get to the pearly gates, our good Lord doesn't say, "What did you talk about doing? What press releases did you issue about things you wanted to do? What proposals did you make to the legislature that never happened?" Our good Lord says, "Show me the list of what you actually accomplished. What did you get done?" And that's what matters. And we have to get that spirit back, you know. We have to get that spirit of actually accomplishing. Well, there's opposition. There's opposition to everything. Raising the flag, there's opposition. I mean, there is no perfect anymore, especially in this political world and this litigious environment, you know. But we were always about vision first. We're now redoing the Long Island Railroad. 1834, they built the Long Island Railroad. Now think about this mindset. It's 120 miles from Manhattan to Montauk Point. They built the Long Island Railroad not to get to Montauk Point, but only to access a ferry at Montauk that could take you to Boston, because they thought they would expedite the commute to Boston. So to expedite the commute to Boston, which first, how many people are going to Boston, I don't know. And you know, what was the difference really expediting the time frame to commute to Boston? But to expedite the time to commute to Boston, they built a railroad from New York City out to Montauk Point, 1834. That's the kind of can-do spirit. Now, by the way, the ferry goes bust because nobody's going to take a train all the way out to Montauk to get on the ferry to go to Boston. But they built the Long Island Railroad. And then what it wound up doing was accessing Long Island, and people started to go, and development grew, et cetera, and the highway system, parkway system, and we went from there. But that's who we were, that kind of spirit, that kind of energy. And then George Washington Bridge and Verrazano Bridge and Holland Tunnel, you couldn't build because there was no tunnel that long that you could actually aerate, where you could get the fumes out and oxygen in. We said, baloney, we could do it. That spirit is what we're rekindling. The Long Island Railroad is a perfect example of that. They've been talking about building that second track and third track since I was 4 years old. And you hear on the news report in the morning, there's a delay on the Long Island Railroad because the track has a problem. They mean literally the track, because there is one track. A squirrel dies on the track. Long Island is backed up for 3 hours because there's a track. Well, why don't we have 2 tracks? Oh, that's an idea. How about we have 3 tracks? Oh, that's an idea. But then we would have to do this and this and this, and now we're actually doing it, and we're doing it in real time. One of the reasons I love working with Steve and Laura, they are going to have a long list when they get to the pearly gates of what they've done. And when I talk to them about taking on an ambitious project, a lot of politicians say to me, well, you can hear the fear in their voice. Well, we have to see, I don't know, there's going to be opposition. Laura and Steve are always the exact opposite. How do we get it done? How do we do it? It's going to be tough, but we can do it. And we are doing great things together on Long Island. Let's give them another round of applause. And let me tell you about what we're going to be doing this summer together. The county executives, myself, and many of you, I hope. As I was saying, New York has a long and proud history when it comes to many progressive firsts, but certainly when it comes to the environment, we were a national leader from day one. Nation's first state park created, state of New York, Niagara Falls, 1885. The Adirondack Park, which is a national, if not international, jewel. It is just phenomenal. 1892. Teddy Roosevelt really expanded it and brought notoriety to it. But it is magnificent. If it was a national park, it would be one of the largest in the United States of America. And it is magnificent. In terms of government regulation on the environment, we started an EPA, Department of Environmental Conservation, before the federal government even started a Department of Environmental Conservation. So today, part of our legacy is to continue that progressive movement and that progressive vision. When it comes to the environment, there is no state in the United States that has been more aggressive than New York. No state in the United States. California talks about it a lot, and they've done a lot of good things, but we have actually been more aggressive in environmental protection measures. $300 million for what we call the Environmental Protection Fund, which is the largest investment in history, a $2.5 billion Clean Water Infrastructure Act. Clean water is going to be Clean water is going to be the issue over the next 20, 30 years. The more we look and study our groundwater, the more problems we find. The more chemicals you look for, the more chemicals you find. And we're paying the price of decades that just dumped sewage and dumped remains, thinking that, well, once you pour it into the ground, it's gone. It's never gone. You pour it into the ground, it's in the groundwater table, it sits, and then it mixes with all the other chemicals, and now you have a cocktail that no one has ever seen before, especially on places like Long Island, where you have a porous surface and groundwater table that's moving. But that's one of the largest investments. We also have to clean up our bays and our rivers. We started a first ever $200 million shellfish project, which restores clams and oysters to the natural waters. Joe Saladino, Jay Schneider, many of the local governments have been very helpful and active in doing this. This is us planting clams, seeding as they call it. That's Steve Ballone, who you see. We were supposed to be tossing clams off the back of the boat. For some reason, Steve's eye-hand coordination put more clams inside the boat than outside the boat. But next time he's going to practice first, and I'm sure we're going to be able to get those clams on the other side of the boat. This is Steve smiling. It goes back to his introduction. We gave him $380 million to connect 10,000 homes to sanitary sewer systems, which is his visionary project. And it is a visionary project, because for Suffolk, if you want to take care of the water problem, you're going to have to take care of the sewer issue. It's not glamorous, and it was deferred for many, many years, and it's expensive, but he is exactly right. I'm glad to partner with him, and I'm glad that we can make him smile when he gets his resources. We have a 10-year, first-ever Ocean Action Plan, which is a long-term cleanup and resilience plan. We have the most aggressive offshore wind program ever, 2.4 gigawatts by 2030, which we are very excited about. We are in active opposition to a federal proposal that would allow offshore drilling. This is one of the more scary ideas that I've heard recently, and we've heard a lot of frightening ideas. I spoke to Secretary Zinke about it. They believe there are possible oil reserves off Long Island. So they're talking about literally doing offshore drilling, permitting it right off Long Island. They've looked at the entire East Coast, but off Long Island, what they call the New York Bight coming into the New York City harbor, they're looking at as a potential site. I expressed to the Secretary in the strongest terms that we are opposed to it, and that we would litigate the issue if it came to that. What I didn't say, what I didn't say to the Secretary is if they insist on moving forward, we are going to do what Churchill did at Dunkirk, where we are going to order a fleet of private vessels to go out and attack the rigs. But we need to bring that same kind of aggressiveness to conserving and protecting the overall natural resources. Today we are announcing a new initiative. It's not a plan. It's not something we hope to get done. We're going to do it. We're going to do it this summer. It goes on the list. It does two things. It protects the environment, it grows the economy, and it preserves and builds one of the assets, as Steve was saying, that made Long Island, Long Island. The marine economy is a major driver, approximately 10% of the GDP for fishing and fishing-related sales, services, industry. It's a great sporting opportunity. I think the 10% actually is low, and it doesn't take into consideration the number of people who just are on Long Island and love using the marine resources and fishing, et cetera. Artificial reefs have been used all across the world, all across this country, to actually provide a better marine habitat and improve a degraded habitat. Started in mid-17th century with Japan, who started using shipwrecks, et cetera, to create fish habitat. South Carolina was very aggressive first in the 1830s. 1950s, some coastal states started using surplus military equipment to do it. New York, the first artificial reef was 1949 on the McAllister grounds south of Long Beach. The federal government understood that we're destroying habitat, we should be rebuilding habitat, and artificial reefs are a way to do that. The state started a program in 1993, but it's never really been fully developed and never really proceeded. Artificial reefs are about environmental sustainability, it's economic development, it's environmental protection at the same time. It is also an alternative to recycling if you use the right materials. So it's a win-win-win, and it fosters marine growth. It fosters recreation, diving, fishing, et cetera. Everybody agrees there's a tremendous potential for artificial reefs. We just have to make it happen, which is where I started. Get it done, get it done, get it done. Now, obviously, to build a reef takes 450 approvals from everyone and their cousin. We have obtained all those approvals, so we are ready to go forward, and we're going to undertake the largest development of artificial reefs in the state history. We are focusing We're focusing on 12 artificial reef sites. This year we're going to do 6 of the reef sites. We're going to create the reef sites out of salvage vessels that will be scuttled. Some ships as large as 100 feet will be scuttled. Scuttled, for those of you who haven't heard the term, I heard it yesterday. It means it's the process of sinking it, but making sure it's safe and all the materials are gone. They could have just said, we're going to sink, but DEC has its own language, and they insisted on scuttled, so we'll say scuttled. Before we scuttle a vessel, the DEC and the U.S. Coast Guard must approve it and clear it, make sure there are no chemicals, etc. We also have a little structure ourselves that we have to figure out what to do with. It's called the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is coming down, as you know, and it's a large structure, so it begs the philosophical question, what does a bridge do in life after it has finished its life as a bridge? What is the afterlife? Is there a bridge heaven? Well, there is a bridge heaven. Bridge heaven is you spend all your life above the water serving people, and then you go to bridge heaven, which is you go below the water, and you actually create marine habitat. So we have a proven fact that there is an afterlife, at least for bridges. And we're going to take material from the Tappan Zee Bridge, which again has been cleaned and approved and has no toxic chemicals, etc. And we're going to use the old Tappan Zee Bridge for new reef construction. All harmful materials will be approved, removed, and that will all be approved. The reefs are different sizes and different shapes and different configurations, designed for their specific location. So Smithtown, for example, is 1.5 miles off the shore. It's a small reef. It's 3 acres. It's in 38 to 40 feet of water. And we'll have 3 vessels and pieces of the Tappan Zee Bridge. Shinnecock Reef, which is 2 miles from the shore, 35 acres, 79 feet of water. That's obviously larger, more vessels, more pipes, more of the bridge. Moriches, 2.4 miles, 14 acres, 2 barges, Tappan Zee material, etc. Fire Island is one of the largest reef sites, 744 acres. It's 2 miles out. 10 barges of Tappan Zee material, 11 vessels. So that is going to be obviously one of the larger reef sites itself. Hempstead Reef, also very large and 50 feet of water. Rockaway Reef, 400 acres. There is an art to designing a reef. There's an art to everything, but especially to DEC. There is a patch reef design that uses material but leaves sandy soil between the material. So it's not just one cluster of equipment. It creates a patchwork design because certain species need the space in between. And that's the reef design pattern which will be used for all of these reefs. It will be custom designed for the specific area when the materials are actually placed. In total, we're going to have 30 vessels, about 40,000 cubic yards of the Tappan Zee Bridge, steel pipe, jetty rock, etc. The combination of materials apparently creates the best reef environment, attracting different species. Next month, we will start with 33 barges of material and the 30 vessels. As quickly as you start to form the reef is as quick as the results start to bear fruit. Right away, they start to colonize and create a habitat. It will then start to attract fish. The fish start to get larger, anemones, sponges, and mussels, then lobster, crabs, crustaceans, then larger marine species, dolphins, sharks, bluefish, etc. And the habitat development capacity is really extraordinary, especially with our shoreline in many of these areas, which is just barren. It is just a sandy, barren bottom. And there is no natural habitat. So this will actually create it. They will also attract black sea bass, cod, summer flounder, striped bass, which are big sport fishing attraction. You see here several anglers. The one on the top left looks familiar. I can tell by his hat. He's a state official. That's a small fish that I caught, but I caught it. Well, you didn't have to say, yeah, it was so small. So it's not that small a fish. It's not the largest fish. But it wasn't me. I was on my brother's boat. And you know what they say, small boat, small fish. And that's what happened. But it will enhance that entire recreational capacity. And as I said, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it quickly. We start in May, actually, at the Shinnecock, June, July, August, and will be completed by the end of August. It will do half of the 12 reefs, 6 reefs. New York's always led the way. We will lead the way once again. And the proverb that says it all to me always, we did not inherit the earth from our parents. We are borrowing it from our children. And that says it all. Once you think of this is something I'm leaving for my children, then every cell in your body says, I have to leave it better than we found it. And we are stewards for a brief period of time on this earth. And then we hand it off to the next generation. And our responsibility is to hand it off better. And we will. Thank you for having me.
Please welcome the New York Executive Director of the Nature Conservancy, Bill O'Connor.
So I need the riser. I am neither as tall nor as formidable as the governor. So on behalf of the Nature Conservancy, thank you, Governor Cuomo, for the opportunity to be part of today's exciting announcement. The Nature Conservancy has a long history of working on Long Island with New York State, local government, local communities, members of the conservation, fishing, real estate, and recreational communities, solving the challenges that people and nature face. Today's exciting announcement to celebrate the creation of these new reefs in Long Island Sound and in South Shore waters means we create fish and wildlife habitat while providing new recreational opportunities, including fishing and diving, which are good for local economies. Here on Long Island and across our great state, New Yorkers understand that our well-being is deeply tied to the link between nature and us, our health and nature. The prosperity of communities today and future generations to come depends on our conservation and restoration of nature. Our water, our air, our land, our climate. Governor Cuomo is a national leader on the environment. Under his leadership, New York is dedicating, as he mentioned, $300 million a year to the Environmental Protection Fund, essential funding for land and water conservation and community services. We have $2.5 billion for water quality improvements and infrastructure upgrades. We have the Green Bank. We have REV, reforming the energy vision. We have the U.S. Climate Alliance. We have a $1 billion Parks Capital Improvement Program underway. And we have the Adventure New York program investing billions in connecting New Yorkers to nature and our parks. And now we have new reefs in Long Island waters. Thank you, Governor Cuomo, for your exemplary leadership for people and nature. The Nature Conservancy is proud to join you today to announce this exciting and important project. Thank you. And now please join me in welcoming Captain Tony Delernia, former retired director of the Maritime Technology at Kingsborough Community College and Mid-Atlantic Fisheries representative.
I can see he's over there. Thank you very much for this opportunity to come and speak to you today. My very first year teaching at Archbishop Molloy High School, a colleague of mine by the name of John DiOrio told me, we have to keep an eye on this young kid who's getting ready to graduate. He might be going places. His name was Andrew Cuomo. John DiOrio was right. For years, for decades actually, Long Island fishermen have been hoping to see their artificial reefs rebuilt, restored, and they've asked numerous administrations up in Albany to do work and have this happen. And I guess it's always been about the resources that hasn't been able to get it done. But like I tell all my fellow fishermen, we're very, very fortunate in that we have Andrew Cuomo as our governor. He's forward-thinking, he's an environmentalist, and he's a fisherman. And he understands our needs and what we really need as fishermen and what is necessary to contribute to the economy of Long Island. And so to see this project coming about after decades of fishermen asking for it to happen is very, very gratifying and satisfying. And Governor, thank you very much for that. That was just some of the stuff I was sitting here thinking while I was watching him make his presentation. But I do have a written statement also. It's a pleasure to be here for this groundbreaking announcement. The ocean is the lifeblood of Long Island, and this project shows that Governor Cuomo and our leaders are serious about protecting our environment. As a fisherman, I know firsthand how important ocean activities like fishing are to Long Island. It's not a pastime for Long Island residents, it's also a pillar of our economy. Whether it's commercial fishing or recreational tourism, jobs depend on it. The Reef Project represents a major step forward to protect and actually expand the fish ecosystem of Long Island, ensuring that Long Islanders can continue to sustainably fish off their shores for generations to come. It's clear that Governor Cuomo listened to the needs and concerns of Long Islanders and came up with a plan that works well for Long Island. So I want to thank the Governor again for his leadership and for everything he is doing for the people of Long Island. Thank you, Governor, very much. Please join me now in welcoming County Executive Laura Curran.
Wow, talk about reduce, reuse, recycle. This is incredible. So I think I pass over the Tappan Zee often, and I wondered, where will those tons of steel and iron and rivets and everything go? Well, to extend the analogy, it will be saved from bridge purgatory, landfill, and will actually go to the bottom of our waters. And it's wonderful to see two of our supervisors, Joe Saladino and Laura Gillen, who their towns abut water, to have fishing and the ability to have real recreation and ecosystems for our fish there. And as soon as you put it in, it just takes care of itself. You get rid of the pollutants, you get rid of the bad stuff, and then nature takes care of it and turns it into a vibrant ecosystem for fish, for crustaceans. Wonderful for the environment, but also good for people. It makes it more fun to live here, and it's also good for our economy. And I think Steve Bellone will agree with me when I say whatever we can do to grow the tax base and have people make money and spend money, the happier we will be. Governor Cuomo, thank you very much. It's environmental with an economic side effect, or is it economics with an environmental side effect? It's a win-win for all of us, so we're very grateful. Thank you for getting it done.
Thank you very much for coming. This concludes our program today.